into the evening, but welcome to you all. We do have apologies from Councillor Proctor. Councillor Tamihana is joining us later this afternoon, and I assume that Councillor Young is running a bit late. So our first workshop this afternoon is around economic development. So welcome, Brendan, Andrew, Claire. It's nice to have you here, and I'm going to hand over to David. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So it's great to be sitting up here today, joined by Brendan Duffy, Chair of the Horowhena Company, Andrew Reid, Chief Executive of the Horowhena Company, and Claire Ferguson, who's an Economic Development Advisor, started with the Horowhena Company towards the end of last year. So the team, along with ourselves, have been working on the draft Economic Development Strategy, which we're going to talk to you today about. So again, just a quick overview of the purpose of today. We're really just wanting to check in with elected members. The strategy is in draft form, as you all have seen. It's still in development. There's a few bits we haven't quite got to, a few conversations we haven't quite had, but we're eager to check in with you that you're comfortable with the direction it's heading. So for us today, if we walk out of the room, our success would look like we've got any clear direction and feedback on the current draft, so we understand what changes, if any, need to be considered and made ahead of the strategy being finalised and brought back to Council for adoption. So very much in the do piece, wanting your direction, your feedback today as we work through this. Quick summary of the four questions that we're going to be focusing on today is you've had a chance to hopefully read the draft strategy. We want to see, is there anything you're expecting to see in there that isn't in there yet? Is there anything in there that you have an allergic reaction to or that we might need to tweak or refine? Done a bit of work with the indicators, and we'll talk a bit more about those, but do those feel right? And then ultimately we're looking to bring this to you for adoption. So what needs to be true for you to feel comfortable adopting the strategy? Just noting that what's in the strategy will inform the actions and energy of what we do in the economic development space in the next financial year and beyond, and will also be the document that guides the arrangements and the responsibilities that we put into that new contract that we enter with the Horowhena Company for the period starting 1 July. So we'll work through a series of slides, and then we'll be wanting to hear from you and specifically having a look at these questions. Now, just a reminder, because it has come up in a few times, we've done workshops and briefings before, what is economic development? So local government defines it in that fairly wordy way, which talks about a couple of key things, like creating better conditions for economic growth and employment, but the idea of improving the economic future and quality of life for all. I quite like this one, which is slightly snappier, which is economic development in terms of what it's about. It's about programs, policies and activities that seek to improve the economic well-being and quality of life for our community. So it's a very general definition, and I know we have had some stuff tabled this morning which we can talk to a little bit later, which also talks around how we might be clear on a definition for this strategy. Just a reminder in terms of some context. So whilst refreshing and updating the economic development strategy wasn't one of your top 12 priorities, we do have one of our community outcomes, which is this one here about vibrant economy. And under that we have those 5 bullet points there that speak to when we do all things that council do, and we have those ones which are geared towards enhancing or achieving in a vibrant economy. These are the things that we're hoping the work that we do helps achieve. So there is that strategic context to it. Just to, I guess, paint a bit more of that picture, really conscious that when we bring a strategy to you like this in isolation, it does fit within a strategic context. And so this is a diagram slightly cut off at the very top. There is our overarching, or one of our overarching community outcomes, being our partnerships with tangata whenua. Then we've got our other 4 community outcomes here. And we're just toying with this 5th column over here, which makes sense when you see a whole lot of other stuff which sits a bit further down in this strategic framework. But for today, just appreciate that the strategy which you're looking at sits within the strategic piece here. So these are the documents which Council you set the strategic direction on, ultimately around delivering against our community outcomes, and we see this strategy specifically targeting helping deliver on these two here. But then there's also the implementation piece, where a number of these will have implementation plans, and the piece we haven't written yet, subject to obviously what is included in the strategy, will be, well, how does that actually get achieved? Who does it? When does it get done by? Who's it funded by? Those sorts of things. So we, as we'll speak to in a moment, know that economic development doesn't just sit with council, doesn't just sit with the Horowhenua Company. There's a number of players, and so the roles and responsibilities will, that's where you would expect to see those come through there. So the report, the Sagebush report, which has been, I guess, the key driver and provided the direction for updating the strategy, had three key messages. One of those was, and these were the things that they felt maybe could have a sharper focus, I guess, in the report. So one of those was that O2L is a significant opportunity, but is time sensitive. So we know that it's starting. Hopefully the first spade goes in the ground a bit later this year, and then it's going to spend about 5 years being built, and then it's over, and there's this window of, I guess, a whole lot of construction investment in the district over that period of time. As we've talked about, economic development doesn't just happen in isolation, so it requires a whole range of things, and at the time the Sagebush report was written, we still had 6 community outcomes at that point. So it was recognising that economic development does have those touch points within right across the different outcomes. And that key one, which again I highlighted a moment ago, that council cannot achieve economic development alone. It has a number of key roles ranging from leading, enabling, supporting business and communities, but ultimately it needs other players as well. So a little bit of as a refresh. So that Sagebush report was written, prepared in 2024. It was brought to this council at the end of October, and at that meeting there, council resolved that the economic development strategy should be updated to reflect those recommendations. So that's the action that we are looking to complete by doing this work. Again, in terms of context, the economic development strategy we see being used to guide the work program for economic development from 1 July onwards. It will need to have an implementation plan alongside it. It will be something which we want to measure, monitor and report on progress. So having said all this, you want to know how we're tracking and what's being done. Is it making a difference? And we also see it informing the new Horowhenua Company Limited contract, particularly around those roles and deliverables that contract might include there. And so again, just connecting that to a previous council decision in December, we did the Section 17A review where you said, actually, yes, we want to continue with the current arrangement, but in an enhanced model, and you've given the Chief Executive that authority to go ahead and agree a contract for 3 years with the Horowhenua Company to continue delivering economic development services. So this strategy provides that, I guess, informs what then that contract might be asking the company to deliver and the roles that they can play within advancing and implementing the strategy. A few disclaimers. I think it's important just to, again, give context, things that you probably picked up as you went through. So one of those is around the indicators. So work from what we've written in the text rather than the infographic. Just there was a little bit of timing there. We didn't quite get to update all the infographics, but also recognise that some of these, we updated them quite late to reflect the latest, particularly the O2L information. But note that that came with some nervousness, particularly from those involved with the O2L project, where we're talking about a certain dollar amount of local business or iwi or Māori business getting from. There isn't an alliance agreement signed yet. Okay, so there's going to be this process of going through agreeing the price of the project and then ultimately a contract signed. So there might still need to be some tweaks and changes to those if as a council you want to be consistent with those, and we get the chance to talk about that a little bit later. Another disclaimer is that whilst we've had good intent and wanted to engage with our iwi and hapu partners, that has taken some time. Meeting with Shane Royal from Te Tūmatakahuki to discuss with Rokawa essentially this strategy. So an ideal world, the sequencing might have happened a little bit different, but we've obviously wanted to be able to present something to you and have had to accept some of those meeting dates just changing. And we continue just to lock down a date to meet with Luapoko Tribal Authority to have the same sort of conversation. So you can expect a little bit more probably to come from those conversations, which can feature into the document. And I think important to realise that we're dealing with moving pieces. So a number of the projects which are identified as contributing to economic development are already underway. So maybe it's a town centre, maybe it's O2L. There's things that are already moving. This strategy will obviously sort of be finalised at a point in time. We will continue to probably just tweak and change some of the wording to reflect where that is at that point. But just know that rather than waiting for everything to either stop and then capture it, we've accepted that some things are moving, and we'll just continue to try and keep them reflected in the document in the most up-to-date way as possible. So if you're reading something there knowing that maybe in a week's time it's going to look different, then just accept that. We'll try and capture that as we go through this. In terms of process, so like I said, that Sagebush report that came to Council, and that Council said, yes, go away and update the strategy based on these recommendations, that has been what we've used to guide and direct the work that we've undertaken. Claire and formerly Katrina were key parts of starting this work last year, and one of the pieces or the direction from the Sagebush report was to meet with local business and community leaders to get their inputs into this. So a group was set up and has met a few times, had a couple of workshops. It became affectionately known as the Forward Pack, not for their appearances, but probably slightly influenced by Corey Kennett being one of those people who was in attendance and maybe just had rugby on the mind, but also because it was seen as a group, wasn't necessarily the usual business leaders who attend all the sort of usual events. There was some invites went to those who probably have stayed in the shadows a little bit, but we wanted to hear from them. But they were seen as important people in the community that have essentially a desire and a bias to taking things forward, to moving things forward. Much if we were to use a rugby analogy, it's the forwards that sort of get you the momentum and then I guess create the opportunities for others to do it. So they've had workshops and helped us identify some of the key actions, the priorities and timeframes. We've also recognised that economic development has multiple touch points within the council as well. So whilst the portfolio for economic development sits with me, there's work happening in a variety of other parts of the organisation, which is economic development as well. And so we've had internal workshops where we've pulled together those different functions and again checked them against those actions and priorities and timeframes. The work done on the measures and targets has largely been a collaborative effort by ourselves. It's an interesting space. I think there's obviously no end to the number of measures and targets you could have. And it's also, when you're talking economic development, and if you start talking things like GDP and other things, it's quite easy to sort of start to sort of question, how much of an influence do we have on some of those things? What we do here, how much can you actually trace it back to something happening over here? But ultimately, you want to have some measures and targets that you can look at and say, well, this is where it was at this date and this is where it's moved, and know that some of the things you're doing might have contributed to that, but there might be some more macro or global influences that might have also influenced that as well. So have that in mind. We're quite open to, if there's others that you think are better measures or targets, open to seeing what those are. We have tried to always think about how easy is it to measure and report on, essentially, because no point having a really great measure, but it takes you 5 years to be able to calculate the answer to get out. In the lighter text there are just things that we're, I guess, in the process of or that still need to happen. So one is the further engagement is scheduled, some of that being the iwi engagement that I spoke of. And then ultimately still looking at what's that role, that ongoing monitoring role, and we're quite eager to sort of look at the forward pack or a variation of that in terms of them staying connected to this process as we go forward. So you're getting both that sort of on the ground perspectives, but then also, I guess, particularly where there's responsibilities that sit with council or the Horowhenua Company, that we sort of have that accountability there as well. But that might be something you have some thoughts and views on. In terms of the strategy itself, just want to touch on a few things here. So identifies 3 high-level goals. First of those being dynamic, productive, resilient economy. Second being about maximising the economic benefits of O2L. Third being a great place to live, work and play. From there, the strategy then breaks down to 4 priorities, and I was really conscious that presented to Council in October, led by Deputy Mayor but supported by a couple of others, was this very supportive of the 6 priorities that the Sagebush report spoke to. As we've worked through this, we've gone from 6 to 4, partly because we just found that the connections between a couple of them were so close. So it's essentially seen the combination or the combining of increased land supply and improving land affordability. So that being sort of combined into that clear land supply and development strategy. And then combining what was identified as supporting a diverse community and fostering an active and vibrant community, supporting those two to be that last one there. So gone from 6 to 4, which I think is also sometimes helpful to have less. We sometimes suffer here from trying to do too many things, so being quite sharp in our focus and getting it down to 4, I think, ultimately is a helpful thing. The strategy also then includes a piece around strategic alignment. So, like my diagram earlier, this strategy doesn't exist in isolation, and so within the document you'll see that it speaks to and draws out some of the relevant parts of other strategies. So whether it's the growth strategy or the community wellbeing strategy or the blueprint, those things are captured in here. So again, you can see what's driven some of the thinking. Then a piece which I quite like is speaking to what's our opportunity. So some of these things, fostering a diverse, vibrant community, that could apply to anywhere in the country essentially, but then spelling it out, well, what is our opportunity in that space? And so it goes into that detail. A piece I thought was important to include, and admittedly is the piece that's yet to be written, is that within the strategy I thought it was important to touch on, well, what else Council does that is economic development, because I know in some of our prior conversations there was a sense that maybe the money we spent on economic development services was all that Council did as economic development, when in reality there's a whole lot of other things that Council does that actually does contribute. I've included the picture of the Watery Surf Club there as an example. So Council played a role in that, and we know that a facility like that has a whole range of benefits for the community. Whether that now allows them to host different surf life-saving competitions is a range of things which, as I say, on the face of it, you might not immediately make that connection to economic development, but there is that connection. The strategy also touches on the assumptions that underpin the indicators, because I think it's really important that someone who picks this up in maybe a year's time, 2 years' time, just with the way the world's changing, some of the context that we Council operates, it's quite important to understand what was the assumption at the time, because if that's wildly different later on, then that might explain why an indicator looks a bit different or isn't quite tracking the way we thought it might. Then it's got the indicators, and then there's a piece which again yet to be prepared, but that would be the implementation plan around where we get into the detail of roles and responsibilities and potentially timeframes. So that's a fairly whirlwind tour of both the background but also the strategy that's been developed so far. I am hoping you've had a chance to have a read through it, and appreciate Councillor Jennings, you were able to provide some feedback in advance, which you're welcome to speak to. So questions, but if there's other questions about what I've just covered that you want to sort of cover off before diving into any of these, then happy to field those as well.
Just the rural community being more reflected within the strategy, like just what I guess they do. It doesn't necessarily need to be like implemented, but I think having aspirations within that space is still good to be reflected within the community as well. Obviously, a reasonable sort of ratepayer base as well. So I think it's probably good just to reflect in that. We've seen obviously some large horticultural businesses sort of progress, Lewis's and that. I think we need to demonstrate that there's aspirations there to foster and grow in that sort of area as well. as well as obviously a lot of it's O2L related, but what other business could we see as a result of that shorter time period to get to a bigger population being Wellington. So just probably only one from me.
I picking up. I think that's a really good point, because we look at this document and we think of business as a whole. So from our perspective, anyone that's not being paid a wage is business, right? So I think, to Paul's point, being able to focus on some measures or an indication that gives us a sense around what's happening in that rural space will help those ratepayers see themselves and the purpose of business in here. As a whole, nothing in here gives me an allergic reaction at all. What I do like about it is the indicators that you've put up quite clearly tell us what good looks like, or the ability to tell the story about the journey or trajectory or trend that we're on over a period of time. So I think it was a big tip when I saw that need factor in there. I think the mean household income, the increase of annual earnings, more employment, more business, I think you've landed on the right indicators to measure. Only question that I had was really around, I felt 90% felt really aspirational from a base of 74% for the organisational business support feedback, and just wondered how that benchmarks across the industry from an economic development perspective, because it feels like, I get that the organisation and the council might want to be at 90, but sitting at 74, it feels quite a way away, and maybe for the purposes of this initial part of the contract, we can be a little bit less aspirational and more optimistic around what we could expect the community and business community as a whole to be feeling about the way council and the Horowhenua company are delivering those services. So I'd just say test that, and if 90% is organisational standard and the company's happy to chase it, cool, but it felt like it was really aspirational.
Thanks, David. Hey, look, really comfortable with the direction of travel. I think there's some really good content in there. My feedback probably covers 4 areas: definition, the vision and goals. Then I want to talk about one of the priorities, and then indicators. So, starting with definition, I think I don't really like the sagebrush definition. It's just I start reading it and then fall asleep. And so, for me, I would like us to have our own definition, but something that this table, company, trust, iwi partners, the key players all agree is kind of something that's really, crisp. And I sent something through, but I don't have to read that. I can circulate that. But it needs to be really crisp. But what I'd like is also for it to be supplemented with something that is really clear about what ED is and what it's not in terms of our lens. And so, for example, a statement like it's not just about GDP growth. It's not about council picking winners or controlling the market. Being really clear about, we're just trying to contextualise where we see it sort of falling. And then that flows into the vision and goals. Again, I'd like us to be, again, quite crisp here and have really, it's almost like a motto, right? And so I'd come up with business friendly, growth focused, opportunity driven, and then it then flows into really crisp goals around thriving, resilient economy, O2L, our moment to move, and a place people choose, which is that lifestyle component. So just trying to be really clear about those things. Which then leads me into the priority about land supply and development strategy. And I'd somehow like us to try and incorporate the kind of work that Blair is doing, as well as the integrated growth stuff, because we can have land supply and strategy, but it's about the customer focus, optimizing our systems, making it easier to actually get things over the line. Not compromising our regulatory role, but it's about saying we're open to your ideas, we're open to your development idea. Work with us, and we have systems and processes that make it easy, and this district a really good place to do business and bring that idea. And we hear sort of both ends of the continuum. We hear people telling us this is a great council to deal with, you're the best council we deal with in terms of development. And then we have the other end where people saying things are too slow, it's too hard. And so I think it's about trying to just signal or signpost to that sort of optimizing our process, not compromising on the regulatory role, something in there. And so just trying to broaden that priority a little bit. And then just on the indicators, I'm really comfortable with the indicators there, sort of their kind of macro level indicators. I was wondering whether we could introduce something that is around links to our satisfaction survey, something in maybe something around increase in new commercial ratepayers or something like that, something around land consents, and so we can, because that will be able to indicate what's actually happening on the ground in terms of the consent activity. And then there was something for me around sort of that customer conversion. So obviously the company and council both get inquiries about people wanting to move here or set up here or expand their business. And it's something around an indicator that says we're actually converting that inquiry or that idea into something else. I know that might be a little bit hard, but I just thought I'd throw that out there in terms of, because it might require too much of a measurement system to be developed, but you get the gist. And then the other one I sort of had on the list was maybe it's something around vacant premises, retail premises, because I think that might be a good indication of how healthy the retail sector is, or how the local business sector is going. Again, I don't know if that's easy to kind of track over time, and it might be that it's too micro, but that was the idea to throw out there.
Thank you. Really appreciate that feedback, and was actually very comfortable with the wording you had sent through. Crisp, I think, is a good way to describe it, and you have got some succinct points through there. The one where, in terms of the three goals, two I think work quite well in terms of they describe sort of something that we want to be, a thriving resilient economy, a place people choose. The second one, which was Open Our Moment to Move, was the one that I felt we might still want to frame that slightly differently, because the goal as it stands at the moment is about maximising the opportunity. I played with a few different things about trying to play on the road thing, about the road to a better community or something like that, but trying to get it back to that thing about what is the goal, and I think at the bottom of it is around using this opportunity which is here now to get the best for the district. So that would be the one that I'll probably continue to think about. The others I was actually really comfortable, I think fit quite well.
Sorry to be a pain. There's one thing I didn't like, and David Allen will jump at me, is the blueprint reference here. It's got that. I quite like the alignment and how it aligns to the specific parts. But there's one. This was the issue that I've always had with the blueprint, is that we've never agreed as to which actions we're going to fund and action. We've kind of, and so there's one in there about providing a multifunctional market building, and I just hate that as an action, because I just don't think it's council's role. To be honest, we can enable and facilitate the private sector getting there, but I just don't think it's something that council should be promoting as. And so I was nervous about it being in there, because it feels like council's kind of, again, hinting to the fact that it sees it as something that it will do.
Yeah, and just in response to that, I take the point on board. In terms of the current wording, I can see that it does commit us beyond what we really want to be committed by, but the general aspiration needs to stand there, but not as currently worded.
I too like the general direction of travel of this. Obviously, devil will be in the detail in terms of the implementation plan, and then I think the hardest part is actually going to identify the responsibilities in terms of the lanes that each one of us and the crossovers that might then come about, because I think we need to have clear delineation in terms of what the expectations of each, or the council or the company or whoever in terms of that. I'm also thinking that I know we need to be parochial and very self-centred, but I think there's a wider regional sort of conversation that we need to understand our role in terms of what we play in that wider regional, but both Wellington and North, because I think we're part of we're one district, we're part of a wider region, and how we play into that sort of market as well, especially with O2L and things like that being those opportunities. I think there is some definite synergy in terms of that. Couple of small points. The circle on page must be 8, when it says how economic development works, and we have a circle to increase spending on health, education, etc. I just, where does that fit in terms of, is that our responsibilities, or I don't see that as being anything really to do with increased investment in the sort of community would be some of my things. The other, be very good to see that the clear land supply and development strategy. It'll be interesting to see how that turns out. Just also some of the data around NEETs. Unfortunately, NEETs is 18 to 24, by the way, too, not 15. And also our rate at the moment is 22.1%. It's quite considerably higher than the 18 or the whatever we're showing there, 18.2%. So that's pretty big. So I wonder whether the target of trying to be within 2% of New Zealand's NEET rate might be a bit of a stretch initially, anyway. And there's some obviously the odd comment and things that I don't necessarily agree with, but that's minor sort of tinkering. But all in all, a good start. Thank you.
Yeah, look, very, very happy with it, the way it's worded. I'm just impatient for what happens next. And O2L is front of mind, and it's about how can we yesterday start to leverage off O2L, given the diggers are in the ground. So that's really my focus now. But in terms of that broad strategic direction, I'm very comfortable with it.
Yeah, same. Thanks, Dave and team. I'm really comfortable with the way it's being framed. Just I'd made a note also from what Paul said around the rural, given our position around our food hub and what we are producing in this district. Really good to see a bit more around that. And certainly concur with most of the comments that have been made by Sam and Clint and Bernie. I don't quite agree with the circle thing, Bernie. I think that just fits in that circle, but it's just my view. So really comfortable. Thank you.
Yeah, and just further to that, Bernie, maybe the word is about spend around the detail of the wording, but I can't see economic development, that circle, working without a good, healthy education sector in terms of the skills we want and the retention of people in our district that we want. So something in education I'd like to see there, but maybe better wording.
Conversation for later, probably.
Just the other thing I had was I guess on the back of O2L, what that will mean for Shannon and Foxton. I just wonder whether we can flesh that out a bit more. It is commented in there on page 12, but obviously I'd like to probably see. I think there's a real opportunity for growth there, as well as whether it's housing, businesses as a result of that road going through, and then also talking on the transport hub on
page 14. I wonder if, it could come into the implementation strategy, but do we then actually talk about, the like your Kiwi Rail development and having those extra trains or connection? Do we actually have that either in here or that next strategy just to highlight that? Because it's obviously work that is going to get done into the future. But I think that transport is obviously a big thing for those, especially, the Shannon and Foxton. We sort of concentrate probably more on the more highly populated, but it's still good to have that connection, I think, for those smaller communities as well.
Just to respond to a couple of bits, and admittedly, it's the detail probably comes a bit later on that page, which is headed up implementation plan, which is the second to the last one. You'll see in there for take Foxton and Shannon, both recognition that there's a plan. Plans being developed, and obviously we start to hopefully implement what's in those plans, and even under that, that recognition of public transport buses, public transport train. So as moves that are sort of afoot, we see them being part of this, and obviously there will be some detail around the roles and ensuring those things actually happen and contribute to this.
I just got one final comment, and it's probably to, obviously, in the lead up to the SAGE Bush report, we had those sessions, and it was fair to say that not every elected member is on board with should council be playing in the economic development space, right? And with the government's direction also about councils not being mandated to deal with community wellbeings, we need to kind of, and it's kind of covered under the why we need a strategy and a plan section, but I wonder if we need a bolder statement around why we have chosen, why council has chosen to do economic development, why we think we have mandate to do it, and why we've chosen to do it, because there will be people that are against us playing in this space, against this strategy, and so we need to just be really upfront and quite bold about saying we think this is important, because if we don't play a role in this, there's no one body that will fill in, will play that coordinating role. I don't know. Maybe you think it's a risk by doing that in there, but I just front foot it is.
I have a slightly different view from Sam, because I think it's really important that we complement the community wellbeing strategy and some of the other strategies that we've got. They have to align somewhere along the line. We can't just be, again, having lots of different strategies and then not actually complementing one another. And if we don't do that, we're looking like we're operating down silos again, and not. So I'm keen to ensure that that there is some alignment with some of those other strategies, including that community wellbeing strategy.
I think just to answer your specific question, Councillor Jennings, we can add some very crisp language into the strategy about the mandate council has given via the long-term plan, where it sets its community outcomes around a thriving economy, its level of service within the long-term plan. But there was also some really useful commentary we could pick up from a speech of Minister Patterson last week, the Minister of Rural Communities, who pleaded with local government that when we talk about doing the basics brilliantly, do not decrease your investment in economic development. So interesting, while we have a get back to basics, do the basics brilliantly, removal of four wellbeings, we also actually have the government of the day telling councils to stay in the space of eating.
I'll come to Councillor Boyle in just a moment. Just to add to that, I think there is, within that crisp wording, I think there's something we can say which recognises we're at a unique crossroads, if you like, in the sense that this opportunity that's right on our doorstep at the moment, particularly in the next 5 years, and obviously immediately beyond O2NL, if you sort of look at the economic development timeline for this district, this is actually a real pivotal point. So if we don't take real intentional action at the moment and in a targeted way, there's the risk of losing or missing out on the opportunity, when we've always talked about how this and the growth that comes with it and things is the opportunity to actually lift the socio-economic metrics for the community. So we'll make a note and see if we can try achieve what you've picked up on there. Councillor Boyle.
Hey there, a couple notes, two real minor ones. We've got the numbering of the blueprint actions within this strategy, but as a standalone document, it makes no sense to have them numbered. If you can figure out a way for that link to make more sense, if Joe Public picks this up as a standalone document, it just looks like it's misnumbered. Page 10, can we use standard fonts and formatting and color scheme? Anyway, actual content. The blueprint actions do feel a bit outdated, as Sam noted for some of them. My only one that I really hate is create a website presenting the district's potential. Council makes a lot of websites. They cost us a lot of money. It'd be great if we just used the one website we have for lower maintenance costs and, better integrated visibility. The strategy focuses a whole bunch on manufacturing and increasing manufacturing. We've already got pretty good capacity for manufacturing, I would say, in some areas. So it'd be neat if we could tone down some of that language slightly. I'd support Paul's suggestion that it's a more broader focus, including the food processing and the rural economic sector, which is more where we kind of want to see growth. I'd also like to see something about micro businesses in there. Small businesses are a crucial part of our economy, and often a lot of the local transactions are through these small businesses, and that's where innovation really starts. In terms of the indicators, pretty happy with them, but we're using mean income as a measurement, which is actually not terrible for our districts. But if we look at the median income, which is a far more accurate picture of income distribution, it might help us better track, lifting the earnings of those in the lower income brackets. Just my thought. I'd kind of like it slapped in the measures if we could fit it in. That's me.
Thank you. Anyone else? We've almost heard from everyone.
Yeah, not much more to add. Everyone's pretty much said it. For me, it was aspirational. I was also devil in the detail, and the how, who, when is what I'm interested in, and also obviously the iwi Māori engagement. So, kia ora.
So, I suppose the guts of it, from the discussion that we've had, is 3 or 4 comments about implementation, delineation of responsibility, how, who, when. I'm really concerned to make sure that we've got utter clarity around the timeline that we're working to, and that we have those points of clarity really, really understood. So as I understand it, when this is adopted by council in a month's time, is it between now and then that those points of clarity are clarified, or is it beyond that as we work, as the document is implemented, that points of clarification come to pass? And I'd be nervous if that's what it is. So it'd be useful to have some statements around this so that we are really, really clear in this space, because clearly once there's an adoption of the plan, then there's a negotiation for the contract, and then there's getting out there and delivering the work, and then there's the reports against that. And I just want to be really, really sure that there is clarity in that space between us all. And there may well be, but it'd be good to articulate it.
Yes, so I think we're really clear as council. Council's direction to us has been to focus on the development of an ED strategy, and that's what today's workshop's about, is that check-in with our governors. Council will consider the adoption of the ED strategy. Parallel to that, Council have given me delegations to ensure that we've got the adequate provisions in place to give effect to that. It will be an organic process where it's going to evolve, because the ED strategy, as we picking up on some of your earlier points, David, around whether there's a sounding board that continues to give guidance to it, But if you're worried about our ability to meet timeframes, I've got no concern about that. Council's decision is about the ED strategy. Inside the business, our job is to ensure that that ED strategy is reflected in the contract that we enter with the Horowhenua company, acknowledging the Horowhenua company is only one part of the jigsaw puzzle. There are multiple players that are going to help bring this strategy to life.
All right, so we start off today by giving you a bit of background to where we come from, the work that's been done, outline the format for the strategy, and we've asked you some questions around whether we're heading in the right direction, which was what our purpose was. We talked about how success today looks like us leading with clear direction and feedback, and we feel we've got some really good feedback, certainly things which I think are quite achievable to work on or to take on board. And as indicated, there's still some further conversations for us to have to probably add some detail and information to this. And then I think as a number of people have identified, there's the work that goes into getting clear and around the responsibilities, the roles, the timeframes, the implementation is obviously what people will tend to focus on. Once the strategy's been done, it will be that document around the implementation which becomes the focus for most people, and getting that right will be important, and we'll make sure we step through that carefully. Sam?
So a little bit to Brendan's question is that, so this the next time we'll see the strategy is probably as a draft strategy for adoption for the end of month meeting, right? Or June meeting. Then when does the implementation plan get developed, over what timeline? Or is that a specific deliverable that the company will be asked to do? Or do we do the implementation plan that then creates deliverables that get reflected in the contract? Like, how do you see that?
I was careful not to be too presumptuous today in terms of what I put in the slides, but based on the feedback, reasonably comfortable that we're not wildly in the wrong place. So I think this can be a parallel process where, as we continue to advance and we're down to detail, basically, really, from what I've heard today, getting that right, we start that conversation around the implementation plan, the roles, responsibilities, which of those make sense to go into the contract. So that's happening in parallel. They might be, I think, weeks is probably all that would be between them. Ideally, as you say, there's a contract with some clear responsibilities by 1 July, and there's an implementation plan which, even if it's the first section of the implementation plan, so we're clear on the first, whether it's 6 or 12 months or whatever, that's clear now that some stuff will probably evolve as we go forward. So that's how I see it moving. Just in terms of how it comes to council, I think keeping a slightly open mind to, if we get specific stuff in the iwi engagement space, or if we find sort of diving into some of the feedback you've given that maybe takes us into a different space, there might be a further sort of workshop or briefing. It might just be something we circulate in advance before finalising, asking for any further feedback, or whether we've done a good job at reflecting what you've told us today and that. Obviously, the ideal world would be that the document that comes to you for adoption is one you're pretty comfortable with, and you've had the opportunity to check that your feedback is reflected in that.
David, we've been a bit remiss in not giving the Claire an opportunity to introduce themselves, because I think, as far as I'm aware, this is your first appearance in front of council. So it would probably be, can you give us a couple of minutes and just tell a little bit maybe about your vision and where you see the company and council going would probably be worthwhile, I think.
Thank you, Bernie, for putting me on the spot. Hi. Andrew Reid, it is my first opportunity to speak to you, though I know a number of you just from the engagements around the community as well. Look, a lot of hard work and activities behind the scenes have gone into the THCL for a number of years. And we're at a precipice ourselves. With the opportunity of the major project leads to greater opportunities for our businesses and community. It's really exciting for myself to be a part of that. We have a very strong professional team that's been built up over a number of years. Fundamentally, coming in, it's me about finding my way with the team because the team know their roles. And I think that's a really important message. It's not a walking in and saying, right, we're going off in that direction. Fundamentally, we've been delivering above and beyond a contract that was agreed in the past. Back to the point of precipice for change, I believe with the work that Claire has been doing with David and having these conversations, we have an opportunity to deliver more. We have an opportunity to communicate more and be that independent voice that can potentially support the council, but also the wider community. And that's what I'm wanting to be a part of, is more around how do we work closely with the council? How do we support businesses as we are today? There is, I think I call it there's a little bit of a beacon over the top of us with the major road. Nationally, we're going to see challenges over a period of time, but fundamentally that road that is being built will potentially provide some opportunities for some green shoots, to use the cliche terms. What we do with that is up to us as a team, as a unit, as a wider community to act upon. Quickly, just about myself. Look, I come from a corporate background from many years ago, working in large corporate companies, especially in IT. Worked in public sector as well, Ministry of Education, but also in particular I was very proud of my time working across the Department of Corrections for Spark. There was 300 staff in the service management space. It was the largest service management account at the time. Why that's important myself is it's fundamentally like driving the Titanic. A lot of people going in the same direction whilst they're dealing with data sovereignty matters, moving into the world of Office 365 and all those things that we see today and we take for granted. It was a hell of a journey for myself. Moving into smaller businesses and working on business modelling, I think that's why this is such a great role for myself. I see a great opportunity to work with one of the conversations today. I mean, 95% of the small business makes up the region, right? That's about understanding your people, understanding actually where they're wanting to go, and how we all connect. So, yeah, look forward to working with you all. Feel free to reach out. We're a very strong team, as I say, and we're here to help. Thanks.
Thank you, Bernie. So yeah, Claire Ferguson. I haven't been at the Economic Development Agency very long, but I feel hugely positive about this region and the future, the next minimum 10 years we've got here. I think there are some awesome opportunities that we have to grab with both hands and wring every benefit out of we can. I am hugely committed to making that happen. Love a good project. My background is not in economic development. My background is from all over the place. But I think, including having been in business, but I think there's so much potential here that it's very, very exciting.
Very good. Well, thanks again for the feedback. And as always, if you have a burning thought or a great idea after today, feel free to fire that my way, and we'll be working on this in the coming weeks. Thank you.